For now, the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, is expected to deliver his 2020-2021 budget speech at the National Assembly Chambers on Wednesday, the 26th of February.
So it's particularly interesting because our current economic challenges make this speech important to both us as South Africans and for the South African economy. Again, after 2019's wobbly economy and negative credit rating, Eskom takes center stage as possibly the biggest dent to the economy. You've got debt to GDP ratio of just shying away from 60% and unemployment rates that are literally too high.
Now, what will it really take to restore not only the faith of South Africans, but also get the buy-in of foreign investors and ratings agencies? Now, to answer some of these questions, we are joined in studio by chartered accountant and financial news commentator Sinesipho Manjinjwa. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritties, let us take a look at what the President said in his State of the Nation address on the Economic Master Plan and how it can be, and then we'll be chatting to our guest.
We need to fix our public finances. Low levels of growth mean that we are not generating enough revenue to meet our expenses. Our debt is heading towards unsustainable levels, and spending is misdirected towards consumption and debt servicing rather than infrastructure and productive activity. We cannot continue along this path, nor can we afford to stand still. When he delivers his budget speech 2 weeks from now, the Minister of Finance will outline a series of measures to reduce spending and improve composition. We are engaged with Labour and other stakeholders on measures that we need to take to contain the public wage bill and reduce wastage. Efforts to reduce government spending, to prioritize resources more effectively, and improve the efficiency of our tax system are important, but they are insufficient contributions towards stabilizing our public finances. Achieving sustainability will ultimately require us to address structural challenges in the economy that raise the cost of living and doing business. By working with the Auditor General to reduce irregular expenditure, by shifting government spending from consumption expenditure to investment in infrastructure, we aim to improve the state of our public finances. National Treasury and the Reserve Bank are working together to ease pressure on business and consumers. We have decided to establish a sovereign wealth fund as a means to preserve and grow the national endowment of our nation, giving practical meaning to the injunction that the people shall share in the country's wealth. We are also proceeding with the establishment of a state bank as part of our effort to extend access to financial services to all South Africans. The Minister of Finance will provide details on this in his budget. We will be undertaking far-reaching economic reform measures that will include those that are contained in the paper produced by the National Treasury entitled Economic Transformation, Inclusive Growth and Competitiveness. This year we are moving from the stabilization of state-owned enterprises to repurposing those strategic companies to support growth and development. After years of state capture, corruption and mismanagement, we are working to ensure that all SOEs are able to fulfill their developmental mandate and that they should be financially sustainable.
Well, Sinesipho, thank you very much for joining us off the back of what the President outlined there. I mean, we've seen the Minister, Tito Mboweni, Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, has a mammoth task perhaps of gaining public approval investor confidence and ultimately growing the economy with that pending Moody's outlook also. I mean, what is he going to be prioritizing for this incoming financial year?
So the main thing that's going to come out of the budget speech is actually, quite simply, is the stabilization of the financing for the SOEs. You've seen SAAs in business rescue. You've got the massive funding hole that is Eskom. You sort of have to, I think that's what the rating agencies would want to understand first, which is, first and foremost, what is the plan for the SOEs? Because as you know, government undertakes the liabilities for SOEs. So ultimately, you want to know, how are they going to manage the exposure? I think that is sort of the crux of the budget speech. The second aspect of the budget speech is, in a shrinking economy with a shrinking tax base, the first thing you need to actually ask yourself is how they're going to fund all of this. So ultimately, there's an expectation that there's going to be some increases in taxes. So that is sort of where the outlook is going. So it's a balancing of liabilities as well as an increase in your income and revenue. Because you did hear a couple of weeks ago that SARS did say that they missed their target. They're going to be under target by 5%. That 5% equates to about roughly just over 50 billion. So it's not a small number. So it literally is based on a shrinking tax base. When the economy is not growing, companies are not paying over as much to SARS. And as you know, the middle class is already under strain. And you know you've got VAT issues because the poorest are, of course, also taxpayers, which people always forget.
And I mean, SARS also, as a reputational institution in South Africa, needs to also be restored to its former glory. I mean, it was rated the best in the world at some point. So with that, with the digital migration that's also happening, I mean, how does that also factor in come the budget speech?
So come budget speech, you're expecting, Minister Tito Mboweni did allude that they're going to be allocating additional funding to SARS for the digital migration. And also with SARS, with the re-establishment of the units, so the one that tracks your people, high-end tax dodgers, as I like to call them. So those in the Instagram live, the high-end Instagram, that's the purpose of the unit. The purpose of the unit. So they're trying to go after your low-hanging fruit. So they're trying to increase their collection, but at the same time, you've got an economy that is not growing. So we're expecting tax increases. There has been talks of, I think, from a political sphere, has been talks of introducing additional wealth tax to not the middle class, but the really, really, really wealthy. That's the circa ultra high net worth individuals. But that's never gained momentum because it is a political hotbed. I think the EFF is the only one who's actually talked about it, and some corridors factions in the ANC have mentioned it before. But at the end of the day, the problem is that we're in a shrinking economy, and I think people forget that the Minister of Finance job is not to stabilize the economy, it's not to grow the economy, it's just to outline what we will spend and the growth sectors in the economy, the growth, I used to call the governance growth, are your economic development ministers, your trade. They need to be the one driving growth. Small business, they need to be the one initiating. Treasury's function is not to grow the economy, it's just to balance the books. And I think that's where we're going towards. And also an important aspect of the budget speech is to find out what's the funding plan for SA Inc. going forward. So how much funding does Treasury intend to raise in both the local markets as well as the international markets, which is why the ratings agencies' approval it's quite matters. But yet again, for me, every time we have an issue of an SOE, that's a misdirecting of funding that's supposed to be going to driving the economy, driving initiatives. Because every time you've got these capital calls on SAA, I don't think people, or Eskom, where do people think the money goes to? It's a misdirection of public funds.
So let's